Welcome to Ozarks Crime Watch, where the shadows of the Ozarks come to light. We search the forgotten corners, uncovering unsolved mysteries, missing persons, and cold cases that still haunt our region. Join us where every story matters, every voice deserves to be heard, and no case should ever be forgotten. In the Ozarks, the past never really stays buried, and somewhere out there, someone still knows the truth. Welcome to Skidmore, Missouri, a small farming town with fewer than 300 people. It is a quiet community with a long history of mysteries and violence. In April 2001, a 20-year-old man named Branson Perry walked out of his home on West Oak Street and vanished. There were no witnesses and no signs of a struggle. He simply disappeared.
Skidmore is a place where every home has a story. Some of those stories never reach a proper ending. The disappearance of Branson Perry is one that still weighs heavily on this town. People here feel it, even now.
Not far from here is the bar where one of Skidmore's most infamous events took place. This is where Ken McElroy, a man known as the town bully, was shot and killed in 1981. Dozens of people witnessed it, yet no one was ever convicted. The message this town learned was to keep quiet. The same silence has echoed through every major crime here, including the disappearance of Branson Perry.
What happened to McElroy shaped the culture of this town. People have learned to protect one another by not talking. When Branson disappeared, that same code of silence made it incredibly difficult for investigators to get clear information.
This is where the trail begins. On April 11th, 2001, Branson was cleaning the house for his father's return from the hospital. A friend was helping him inside. Two men were outside working on the car. Around 3 p.m., Branson said he was taking a set of jumper cables out to the shed. He never returned. Days later, the house sat unlocked and silent with the music still playing.
So what stands out most is that the jumper cables were returned to the shed about 2 weeks after Branson vanished. That means someone came back long after the police and the family had already searched the property. Whoever it was had access and confidence.
12 miles east of Skidmore is an area near Quitman linked to the case for more than 20 years. A known drug house once stood here. It burned shortly after Branson disappeared. Over time, witnesses came forward saying that Branson had been taken here. In 2024, law enforcement, including the FBI and the Missouri Highway Patrol, conducted a large search of this property. They found signs that the ground had been disturbed at some point, but they did not recover any remains.
Even through the footage, you can feel the weight of this place. The timing and location connect strongly to the early tips in the case. Someone used this land for a purpose. Whether Branson was here or moved later, this property remains a very important part of the investigation.
If you have any information about the disappearance of Branson Perry, please contact the Nottoway County Sheriff's Office at 660-582-7451. to Ozark Crime Watch. My name is Josh Shackles, and today we are investigating the case of Branson Perry, who disappeared from Skidmore, Missouri in 2001. I'm lucky to have a great team of investigators here with me today to look into the details of this case. Let's take a minute and meet them.
Hi everybody, my name is Joe, and a fun fact about me is I am also Ronald McDonald.
Hey y'all, I am Sal, and a fun fact about me is I used to own a restaurant in New York City, so I can scream internally while having the biggest smile.
Hi everyone, I'm Kendrick, and my fun fact is I can't eat soy.
Hello, everybody. I'm Kat Call. My fun fact is I was once deported from Bali. Ooh.
Hey everybody, my name's Connor. Fun fact about me is I like pork chops.
Hi everyone, Sarah here. Fun fact about me, I'm left-handed.
Hey everyone, I'm Whitney. Fun fact about me is I held a crocodile in Australia.
Hey everyone, I'm Raina. My fun fact is that I love spooky season year-round.
And I'm Joshua Shackles, and a fun fact about me is that I love Joplin. I volunteer probably 30 hours a week for different organizations right here in our community. I am a historian and true crime enthusiast and excited to dig into this case. Let's go straight into the case file.
The case file.
Branson Perry was a quiet, athletic 20-year-old from Skidmore, Missouri, known for being kind, a black belt in Hapkido, and someone who enjoyed lifting weights and spending time outdoors. He had graduated from Nodaway Holt High School in 1999 and had worked various jobs, including at a roofing company and a traveling petting zoo. Branson had recently lost his job and was living with his father, Bob Perry, while he searched for his next opportunity. He also had a heart condition called tachycardia, which made his heart race unpredictably, but that never stopped him from staying active. Branson's parents were divorced, and his mother, Becky Clino, remained very close to him and later became his most vocal advocate when things took a dark turn. On April 11, 2001, Branson was at his father's home on West Oak Street in Skidmore, getting things ready for his dad to return from the hospital. His close friend, Gina Crawford, was helping him clean, and two men were outside working on Bob Perry's car. At some point in the afternoon, Branson reportedly ran into the kitchen, grabbed something from a cabinet, then went out the back door. When he came back in, he didn't say what he'd been doing. Gina later took a shower, and when she came out, she saw one of the men working on the car, rummaging through the same kitchen cabinets. When she asked him what he was looking for, he said nothing and went back outside. Around 3 p.m., while upstairs, Gina looked out and saw Branson on the porch. She asked where he was going, and he replied that he was putting the jumper cables in the shed and would be right back. But Branson never returned. That was the last known sighting of him. The next day, Branson's grandmother stopped by and found the house unlocked, the radio on, but no sign of him. It wasn't until April 17th that his parents filed a missing persons report. The initial assumption was that maybe he had left on his own, but that quickly shifted when authorities realized his car was still inoperable. All his personal belongings, including his wallet, were still at the house, and those jumper cables were missing from the shed. Oddly, 2 weeks later, the cables reappeared in the shed, raising even more questions. A large-scale search was launched, covering a 15-mile radius, but nothing was found. Over 100 interviews were conducted. One person claimed they saw Branson at a drug house northeast of Skidmore shortly after he vanished. That same house mysteriously burned to the ground less than a week later. 2 years after the disappearance, police investigating an unrelated case arrested Jack Wayne Rogers, a former Presbyterian minister and Boy Scout leader. He had tried to perform illegal surgery on a trans woman in a hotel room and was later found to have child pornography and disturbing online posts describing the rape and mutilation of a blonde hitchhiker, details that eerily echoed Branson's case. Police also found a turtle claw necklace in Rogers' car that resembled one Branson wore. Still, no physical evidence linked Rogers to the crime. Branson's mother, who was desperate for answers, later said she didn't believe Rogers was responsible. Despite intense speculation, he was only convicted on the unrelated charges and received a lengthy prison sentence. Over the years, new leads trickled in. One especially disturbing tip claimed Branson had died from an overdose and was buried, then later dug up and reburied to avoid detection. In 2009, authorities excavated a site in Quitman based on a tip, but found nothing. In 2022, an investigator said a suspect had been identified, but there wasn't enough evidence to press charges. In 2023, new witnesses pointed to a rural site near Quitman where they believed Branson's remains had been buried. Police dug up the area, and although they didn't find a body, they confirmed that the ground had been disturbed and something had definitely been buried there at some point. Meanwhile, Branson's family endured unimaginable heartbreak. His cousin, Bobby Jo Stinnett, was murdered in 2004. Her baby cut from her womb in a horrific crime. That same year, Branson's father passed away. His mother continued searching for her son until she died of cancer in 2011. In her obituary, Branson was listed as having predeceased her. Even after death, she had reserved a burial plot beside her own for her missing son. His grandmother passed away in 2015, and many of those closest to Branson have now died without knowing what happened to him. Yet the investigation remains open. Police continue to chase every lead, treating the case as a likely homicide with foul play suspected. They say they're just waiting for that one tip or piece of evidence that will finally bring Branson home. As the years go by, the small town of Skidmore, already marked by decades of strange and violent events, still waits for closure in one of its most haunting and tragic mysteries. Branson Perry's disappearance remains a story without an ending, and the search for truth continues.
First impressions.
All right, so first impressions on this case. A young man disappears in broad daylight from his own yard with several people at his house. That's pretty shocking. You know, that stands out. And especially in 2001. What do you guys think on this? What are your first thoughts?
I think it's very strange. For one, that there was 3 people at that house, and one of them was his friend. And without diving more into the story, the very first thing that pops in my head is he was hanging at his house with his friend. They were doing cleaning or whatever. He goes out to put up his jumper cables and then never returns. And then no one says anything. No one thinks that's like out of the ordinary. Now, as you dig more into the story, you hear things that he said he was going to be out for a while and that she took a nap. And you don't really hear anything about the men working on the car outside, even though there's reports that they were talked to by the police, but you don't hear their names or anything, which I thought was very strange. Where they're working on the car is reportedly right next to the shed. So naturally, you would think if he was taken, the commotion would have caught someone's attention. If he just ran off somewhere, well, then he ran off in a hurry with jumper cables in his hand and then brought him back 2 weeks later, or somebody brought him back 2 weeks later. It's very bizarre. The more and more you get into the story, you hear about him being at a party. You hear about him being sexually assaulted beforehand. It's just, there's all reasons to suspect a lot of people, but a lot of them probably don't have anything to do with his disappearance. And I do think at one point I think that's in the case file, is that, you know, some people came forward and said that he was shot and he was buried, but then a report says that the news reported that publicly before the cops could go look at the area, which is, I mean, that's just poor. That's poor work. But
you know, when I think about this case, he was a young, athletic person. He had good relationship with his family. You know, he maybe was struggling with some drug use, but for the most part, he's just a young kid that's growing up in a small town. Much like many other young kids in small towns during that time that probably also dabbled in drugs. So he doesn't really fit the case for someone that would just vanish to me. It definitely feels like some kind of foul play.
I think it's worth noting too that, you know, this was broad daylight in a town of less than 300 people. So even something that's not very exciting that happens in a town of 300 people, everyone knows about. So for me, someone knows, but also it's worth noting that this is a town that's notorious for keeping secrets and has a pretty good success record with that. So I know that it may not necessarily be related to this specific case. However, I think there's been a precedent that's been set in that area that a lot of talking doesn't happen.
I mean, that's definitely true. This is a town that the town bully dies in front of pretty much the whole town, and nobody saw anything.
Yeah.
So they are definitely good at keeping their mouths shut.
My first impression is that this is a solvable, I believe it to be a solvable case, that the police just may not be equipped to do a proper investigation on. A lot of the things that came out were conflicting as far as where he was at last, which we'll probably get into later. But there's so much conflicting information that at the end of the day, it's like someone just mentioned, it's a town of less than 400 people. A lot of people know what happened. And I just think that it's just another case that someone just needs to come forward and talk.
You know, one piece of this that stands out to me is the incident that happened a few days before. So, you know, he is at his neighbor's house. He takes something. He ends up taking his clothes off and dancing around the party naked, and then is sexually assaulted. And as a young person in a small town, that might damage his reputation. You know, he could have all kinds of negative feelings towards his neighbor about that. And, you know, when I first think of first thoughts, you know, I wonder, is it something that maybe he went to confront his neighbor about what happened, and then something happens and, you know, the neighbor kills him and he disappears. So, you know, I feel like there's a lot of real possibilities for what could have happened here, but it's very strange to have, you know, a young, healthy person just vanish in the blink of an eye.
Yeah, it's just like off like the top, from the very beginning you hear about it. There's just so many things that are off kilter. You know what I mean? It just two little details that are weird. The jumper cables, you know, takes them a while to even report it missing. I think it was over a week before I think it was 9 or 11 days or something like that, if I remember correctly, for the report missing. It was quite a while. And so you have that time and space, and the police look for the jumper cables that are not there. 2 weeks later, they go back and they're there. So, you know, you're talking about
That definitely feels like somebody covering their tracks to
staging.
take the jumper cables back.
For sure.
And it has to be someone who knows where they go.
Yeah, they were in the proper place.
You know what I mean? That's it.
Someone that could show up and come and go without catching a lot of attention. And it's just, you know, if he were to have disappeared with the jumper cables, that would be expected, and you wouldn't necessarily be alarmed by them not being in the shed. But then at the same time, it would also not be completely unheard of that they be in the shed at the time of the disappearance as well. So why wait the 2 weeks and come back? Like, they're either there or they're not. But to have that 2 week gap,
And then they're there? That's
right?
weird.
Like, what are we doing? Who put them there? Why?
After the house fire.
Yeah, that doesn't
Yeah,
make
that.
sense.
Theory time.
Okay, let's talk about some theories for this.
I've got one that I've been kind of really looking into more today. Was Rogers, when he went in to speak to officers, Rogers stated that he'd never been to Skidmore, heard of the runaway, or discussed the man on the internet at all. And then further as the interview went on, he went on to say he had no info about the runaway, the missing runaway. So basically he knew that information. And that was another thing, is all the other details that they didn't mention that he knew that it would be impossible to know unless you knew this kid personally. So my theory is going more towards, I wonder if there wasn't some connection with the individual that at the house a few days before he went missing. I think that there's something there that they connected him with this gentleman. I feel like there's some kind of network there, and he went with him, and I don't know, I feel like he was kind of a pawn or something like that.
So you're saying a connection between Jack Wayne Rogers, which was one of the
Right.
suspects, and Bierman, the neighbor
Yes,
who
thank
has
you.
assaulted him.
Yes.
Okay.
I really do. I
Allegedly
just get that.
assaulted.
When I put everything
Allegedly.
together, that's the overall image that I'm seeing, is the only connection, I guess. Thank you.
My understanding from a couple things that I looked at was that Wayne Rogers was investigated over child pornography, completely separate. And I think that's something to kind of take in. I know that we kind of caught him on like not knowing things. And I think at one point he said something about like he really kind of wrote the story after hearing about Perry's disappearance. So for me, I really couple things. One of the things is like the two men working on the car, because it's just kind of like he disappeared and then everybody just kind of left. They're not named. And in a town that small, it's very easy to, no one ever really, as far as I understand, no one's ever really said how Branson wound up at the party equipment. So, it could have been taken there. I think it's just really suspicious. At the point of his disappearance, it's kind of like, you don't really hear much from his friend. Like his friend doesn't seem to care,
And
almost.
not a lot of investment from Gina.
Yeah, Gina. Yes, and so that's really weird because it's just kind of like, oh, I saw a few weird things, and a dude came in, and then my friend disappeared, and
then I went
then I
home,
never
bye.
ever checked on him again, and then the cops were here, and I was like, okay.
Well, you would think that like the closer, investigations start closest to like the last known location. So you have your last known location, you have Gina, the friend, the two men working on the car, the neighbor, and there's very little information put out about those. You would think that with those being closest to the timeline and the last known location, that you would have more information, and that information would maybe thin out the further out you spread geographically and time-wise, and that doesn't really seem to be the case. You're pointing out very valid points about how we're just kind of skimming over all these people that you would think would be key players. Like, why aren't we hearing more about them?
Correct.
Well,
he went missing on the 11th, and I think on the 12th, his father got worried about him because he was always going and visiting his father in the hospital. So the father contacted the grandmother who went to check on him, which I think somebody's already mentioned. And that's when they first thought, hey, I wonder where he's at. So they're asking around, but it was 6 days before they found a missing person, because they were kind of getting shuffled around and hearing different things. It also provides 6 days for people that were involved to get their stories straight. During that 6 days before the police had any involvement, Branson was also reportedly seen at the party in Quitman, Missouri, at a location just east of Quitman. And the house that the party took place in burned to the ground. And then a couple days later, then the police are made aware that he's missing. So there's no way they can go and get any evidence for anything.
Yeah, when that fire happened, they didn't even know he was missing, so they didn't have any clue he was look for the evidence there.
So they're getting all this information from somebody or somebodies. Lots of clues, lots of rumors. And I believe it's the current sheriff says they have a suspect that they believe is probably responsible. But it's another one of those where they really feel like they need a body in order to prosecute.
And there was a tip that he had been buried in one location, and they went out to search that location. They found signs of disturbed earth, but no body there. So they searched all of the surrounding areas. They looked in wells and caves nearby. They didn't find any sign of him. And the FBI even came back for an additional search at that property some number of years later, but still no remains.
And his mother and father both have since passed since his disappearance. And his father passed first, and then his mother did. And his mother had been saving for her dream vacation. And she took that money and started the reward fund. She sold a parcel of land for that reward money. Other than a little bit that the town raised, she scraped and got all the money for a $20,000 reward. And I think it's just a shame that, it hasn't been resolved. And there's someone out there that is probably seeing this happen around them. They're seeing his parents die and with no resolution. And I just wish whoever it is would come forward. They can contact anonymously, if necessary, the Nottawa County Sheriff's Office, and that phone number is 660-582-7451. And I just think it's very important that we think about Branson. And he has a place next to his mother where hopefully his remains someday may be placed so he can rest in peace next to his mother.
Was the house fire accidental or arson?
So one of the reports I got was that it more than likely exploded. So I think that probably arson is a way to kind of hide a lot what was going on inside of the house.
Yeah, it seems pretty likely that it would make sense if it was. So.
Yeah, and I think right around a decade, around the time before meth hit that area pretty bad too. So there was a lot of,
meth was still locally made.
Exactly.
Then,
so
yeah.
Explosions, yeah.
And that house was known as a drug house,
Yes.
So more than likely, like you were saying, during that time, it means manufacturing meth.
Yeah.
Although there were no injuries or fatalities.
Right.
So that was convenient.
I know.
Right, to the
That's,
meth
yeah.
location.
The meth just blow
Yeah.
up.
Just
Happened
blew
to
up
be
on
out of
its
there.
own.
Yep.
For high traffic
Yeah.
locations.
Something
not
to think
have-
about.
Yeah.
So if we know that previous to his disappearance, Branson was hanging out and doing drugs with his neighbor, what do you guys think about the neighbor as the way he gets to the party?
I don't trust anything Jenna Crawford says, not a word of it. I just don't trust her. All of her answers were very convenient. They were also just non-committal and immediately started putting misdirection toward other people, toward Branson, toward this unknown mechanic that was supposedly rummaging around in the cabinets. And as far as her being away to the party, that's possible because, we know that in the Sarah Burton case, there were a lot of people that were helping her get here and there that suddenly just kind of vanished. And it's also, worthy to note that Jason Bierman, the person that may or may not have sexually assaulted Branson, that's kind of still up for debate. Branson's father was quoted as saying that Branson was still kind of struggling with his sexuality a little bit, you might say, is how his father put it. And so whether it was an assault or not, I think the thing that was making Bob Perry upset Branson's father was that he had been drugged when it happened. When whatever activity, whether it was consensual or not, took place, had been drugged prior to that. But Jason moved away very shortly after all this stuff started going down.
Do we know anything about the relationship between Jenna and Jason? I mean, I'm assuming small town. I'm assuming they all know each other. They all hang out together. But do we know if there are any bigger connections between those two?
I don't know that, but I think that this case is one of those where, because we know that people don't talk for different reasons. It could be because they're afraid. But as time goes by, those reasons start to shift, and that's why a lot of times people will come out 20, 25 years later and recollect some things, or somebody's died and now they feel comfortable. Somebody's passed away.
Sometimes loyalties change. Someone stops using drugs or gets burned by someone that uses drugs, and it changes their outtake on things.
And it can also be fear, not fear of retaliation from somebody, but fear that they may somehow get charged and caught up in the charges somehow. So there's a lot of reasons why people don't talk, but as time goes by, that group of people that know start to get smaller.
In any case, it's interesting to interview again, see if their stories have changed up or what they forgot.
And that's why dedicated cold case teams are so important.
Yeah.
I wish maybe we had it on a level where state funding could be used to go for, whether it's a county, just a county has a dedicated cold case team. I think that would be a worthy venture.
Right. I have to wonder, this county sheriff's office, whatever jurisdiction has this investigation, how many people are on their payroll?
Well, it's Nottoway County and it's a poor area, so and however many's on there is probably stretched. And the highway patrol got involved early because a lot of it had to do with, they were just, I'm not going to say they were incompetent, they just hadn't had the training to be able to do some of the things that needed to be done properly.
Right.
Investigate.
Your resources can only get you so far, and resources is money, and money is scarce.
And one of the first place you start typically is the crime scene. And when there's no crime scene, it just makes it that much more difficult.
So as far as Jason, the neighbor, I can see where he could have a motive, but in my eyes, it's like, so let's just say that he did a sexually assault. He did this. Going about to figure out how to murder a person is a much bigger charge. It would just have made more sense for him to do what he did and just leave it, seemingly leave it alone.
Rug sweep it.
And if when the police came and asked, you can honestly, I don't know, like this happened, but I honestly don't want anything else to do, whatever how the conversation went, and just let it be. And now it is Skidmore, so you do have to, really think about how many people know and aren't saying anything, like you were saying, Joe. And as much time is put in from his disappearance to it being reported, you really can't trust anything you hear from anyone, especially the three people at the house the day of. Jenna especially, and two men that are unknown, which is really strange still, that it's not even reported on the news. No one has pointed them out. Like, those are really big suspects to me. But why? Who knows? If it's a meth city, a meth town, and he showed up at a party, which you still don't really know how he got to the party or why he was at the party other than to do meth. The real culprits were probably at that party, but how did he get there? I would assume the two men could easily take him. I say that, don't get me wrong. I think he was a black belt in jiu-jitsu or something like that. Hapkido. Yeah. But he also did have a heart problem as well. So any number of things could have happened.
I know it's been mentioned that regarding Branson and his drug usage, and according to his family, he was getting ready to check himself into rehab. He had went and tried to join the military, and the tachycardia kept him from being able to do that. A lot was made about him having several jobs, bouncing around, but he lives in a town that if you get one job, you're probably lucky. And so, he probably, that's just the way small town is. You kind of get a job here and there. And so what I'm getting at is I see a lot of indication of a young man that was trying to get his life together. And, the only person that mentioned anything about them consuming meth and marijuana was, again, Miss Crawford, Gina. And, she's the only one that came up with that. And again, there was a lot of indication that he was done with that stuff. So.
But that's also, I think, a common time where it's when something could happen, that's when it's going to happen. If he's already got tachycardia, if he's getting ready to go to rehab, maybe he wants, he's going to go out one more time and this is going to be it. And,
that's very possible.
If something's going to happen, that's the time.
The sense that I'm getting is with the incident that happened with Jason, is this kid, everything that's adding up, I just imagine his mental health state being, pretty low spirits and everything. And I just think it's interesting when you connect Rogers and the things that he said. It is quite possible that Branson just maybe did run away. Maybe he wanted to run away. If there's drug use and if he's not sleeping and just all of those kind of things just add up, in my opinion. Maybe he did just want to run away.
The only thing that makes me wonder about the taking off and running away theories is that He left his wallet. He left uncashed paychecks at home. Everything that he would need to successfully run away was left back at the house.
Well, and
But
his
if
dad.
you're having like issues, serious mental health issues after a severe traumatic experience, I think that there's, chance that he's just like, I'm done, and wants to leave, and then ends up running into this man that he hears his story and is like, oh, take advantage of this one right here. He was up there possibly with that camper that they found the DNA in, Rogers, and I don't know, I just think maybe you could have met him on the road or something.
The question is,
essentially what Jack Wayne Rogers claims to have happened is that he essentially picked this hitchhiking kid up off the side of the road, and statistically speaking, when people are fleeing situations, the chances of them running into a trafficker or some sort of foul play within the first 48 hours is extremely high. So
there's also the fact that they were cleaning the house and getting ready for the dad to come home. So
I think of his relationship with his dad. He spent that quality time visiting his dad. Would he leave?
But again, if there's some type of, say, drug-induced psychosis.
Sure, but still.
the question,
I feel like the most likely scenario is that he went to a party and died at the party, and people freaked out and said, "Oh my God, we've got to cover this up. Let's set the place on fire."
However,
that is very common. I mean,
that's maybe a little extreme to set the house on fire, but
Carol Solon's right over in Baxter Spring, Kansas. The final report on her was that she died from a drug overdose, and they got rid of the body.
The thing we got to think about though is the jumper cables made it back to the shed. If Wayne Rogers would have picked him up, those jumper cables would not have made it back to that shed.
I think that girl made up that story the main one. The jumper cables.
But then the jumper cables weren't in the shed, and then they were in the shed.
But see, and that's another thing. Well, that's another thing is that if he would have went with Wayne Rogers, she would have had no reason to make up anything about the jumper cables.
Or none of these.
She just would have been bounced. He would have just bounced.
If he would have just disappeared with somebody, I doubt we would have so many different rumors and so many different possibilities, because everybody would be like, nothing, like they'd be blank except he's gone. Instead, there's a lot of convenient excuses as to where he was, what he was doing, time on it.
So the jumper cables, I have lots of questions about that, because why would the jumper cables have been in the house in the first place?
Exactly.
Especially when there's two mechanics outside.
And
wouldn't they be with the mechanics?
Who was fixing the
alternator? Who's working on the electrical system of the car.
Right.
So maybe the jumper cables were in the car this whole time, and someone just said, "Oh," and put them away. Or maybe the mechanics took the jumper cables with them when they left, and then realized, "Oh, I have these jumper cables. I need to drop them back off at the house."
Yeah, I feel like the jumper cables could be something we're hyper fixating on. Like it could be, I don't know.
I think it's definitely worth mentioning too that Branson's mother said that she didn't feel like Rogers was responsible before she died.
The police didn't really think he was either after they did a more thorough investigation as far as timelines and film. But
the mother went to Rogers' federal court hearing though, so I'm trying to think of when she would have said that.
She did say that though. Before she passed, she did say that.
Okay.
I don't know if we saw the same exact source on that.
Yeah, there's a few sources that say that. One more thing about the jumper cables though, is that there was no fingerprinting done on these jumper cables. They were put back in, seen by the police, and then never fingerprinted. And I guess the reason was they said that, what was it? As many people as could have touched the jumper cables, it could have been you wouldn't have been able to get anything. But how do you know how many people have had the jumper cables? And it's also one of those things. It's the town. Like the police could be part of the problem as well. I mean, it's meth. It doesn't just stop because you put on an outfit, a uniform. So.
Well, they promoted this culture of let's not talk, let's not say anything, everyone stay silent, and we'd like people to come forward.
Maybe there was a fear after what happened to his family member and how it went, national news.
Close to home.
All right, close to home. So this is a disappearance in a small town. This could have happened anywhere in Missouri. What connections do we have? How does this feel close to us?
I think it's like many other cases we've covered on this podcast that someone knows, someone needs to come forward. Small town connections, small town talk, small town gossip. It's probably been gossiped about, and people just don't want to bring it to the forefront.
This case reminds me, when I think close to home, it has a lot of similarities and parallels as the Sarah Burton case, whereas there's drug involvement, there's someone just vanishing, there's a period of time before the person's reported, the friend that had information just moves away. Just a lot, and like Whitney said, it's also a case that somebody filling in the blanks could put this case to rest and have some resolution for the families.
I think close to home for me on this, obviously, like the thing that's really crazy to me is I think both the other cases that come from Skidmore, the one from the 80s where the guy was murdered from the town, no one came forward, and the one with Branson Perry's cousin, Bobby Joe Stinnett, is that both of them are kind of nationally recognized. I mean, I heard about both of those cases without ever knowing where they happened or really knowing the details of them. But when I read about them, I said, oh yeah, I heard about both of those. So they're kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a legend of some sort in true crime.
For me, this feels like something that could have happened to my next door neighbor. Branson was just a little bit younger than I am, and I certainly knew a lot of people in 2001 that kind of fit that same profile of, small town kid, had always done well, close to their family, dabbled in drugs. I mean, that could have been 100 of my friends. And, It feels like it could have happened anywhere here in Missouri.
Well, in Hannibal, there's the case of Christina Whitaker, the documentary Relentless. If you haven't seen that, with them in it. I've been to, Sally and I actually both went to the locations there that were prominent in that case, her home, the tavern where she was last seen, and but it's a case that's very similar to this one in that it's a small town, Hannibal, Missouri. People know things, they're just not talking.
Final thoughts.
I think when I end this thing, I think the end of all this one really makes me want to know just kind of what really happened. I'd say that. Really, I think about that on all these cases we cover, but like this one for sure is one of those ones like there's just so many little what really happened. What pieces of the puzzle are we missing that need to fill in the blanks? That's really intriguing to me.
I mean, he was only 20, so I think that's something, there's so much that's left uncovered and so much possibility that was eliminated in his life. So, regardless of whether he was doing drugs or not, or, his sexual orientation or what kind of lifestyle he lived, like this isn't the way anybody's story needs to end. So I think that even though his parents are gone, his poor grandmother, is she still with us? Do we know that?
She passed in 2015.
I mean, that poor woman went through the ringer with what's happened with, 2 of her grandchildren just within a couple of years of each other. And that leaves scars for those who remain. So I think that, for him and for his remaining family and for the community as a whole, it's important that this be answered and solved and put to rest.
Branson had a brother, Philip, by the name of Philip. When Branson's parents divorced, Branson went to live with his father and Philip went to live with the mother. And then when his cousin was murdered and the baby removed from her womb, that baby did survive. Her name was Victoria. And, so Branson still has some siblings out there and other extended family that deserve the answers. I've always believed that, with, for example, the Ashley and Laura case, that, we know who the perpetrators were now, but I don't believe that case is ever closed or solved until they can be taken to a final resting spot. And the same thing goes.
True justice without it.
Yeah, I feel the same. I don't know that justice ever happens, but at least the case to me would be closed. But with Branson, I feel the same way. It's going to be one of those that, we may know what happened before we ever know where he's at.
Thank you very much for joining us in the disappearance of Branson Perry. If there's somebody out there that does have information about this case, even if it's a small detail, please reach out to the Sheriff's Department and let them know. They're just looking for one little clue that will lead them to the location of Branson's remains. And, we believe that they know who's responsible. So it could just be any one little detail that leads them the rest of the way home. Next week, we're going to be investigating the case of Jeff Slama that passed away here in Joplin during a home invasion. So you're definitely going to want to tune in for that. Till next time, this is Ozark Crime Watch. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.